The first ceramics class I took was in high school in sophomore year at Conval High School in Peterborough, and I was with this guy, Ben Putnam, who was the only ceramics teacher in the school, and he had like a super loose approach to it. So you walk into class the first day and he kind of just pointed everyone to where the bucket of clay was and said, get some clay and like make something out of it. And immediately I like thought that it was a really cool way to make anything because it was super immediate. You could take a ball of clay and then in 10 minutes you'd have a cup, even just pinching it, and that was really cool to me. And then the first time that he fired the kiln and you got out this thing that was then like rock solid, that was very exciting. So I kept on taking ceramics classes with Ben. I think I took 3 of them. And I found that it came pretty quickly. And I met this woman who was a potter in a town nearby. Her name is Shauna Browdigan. And she took me on as kind of like an apprentice for part of a summer. And I would do like a lot of the menial tasks, like mixing glazes or rolling out slabs or stuff like that. But she was a potter who was like making her living by making pots and wood firing them and selling them, which I thought was really cool. And it was my first like exposure to someone actually doing that as a living. So then I thought, oh, maybe this is a thing I can do as like a career. I don't know if that's the right word, but because the way I make pots, it's like in this tradition of functional pottery, which is not, it's quite different than art pottery in that it's not about individual things as much as sets of things. So I'll never make like one pitcher at a time. It'll be 10 pitchers, and then by the 10th one, that one's a lot better than the first one. And you kind of have to look at them together to understand the purpose of it, because if you're making functional things, then like people need multiple jam jars, cups, plates, bowls. So it's kind of like this whole body of work. And last fall, I made a bunch of pots and I brought them to this place in Maine called Watershed. And it's like a ceramic center. And we wood fired them, which I'd done a few times before, but this was like me and a group of other potters, and it wasn't like school related. So I felt like, I'm doing this with some people who really know what they're doing. And it was like they were gearing up for some big sale that they were doing. But we got to wood fire these 2 kilns called the Cat and the Train, and the Cat looks like a cat. It's got this big arch. And that you fire with salt in it, which gets this really cool glazed texture on the outside. And then the Train is a really long, low kiln that doesn't get any salt, but they're both fired with wood. So it's a super crazy process, but you put all your pots that you've been working on for months into a kiln, and then you put wood in it, and it took us 2 days to fire them. And you're basically hoping that things turn out all right. And I had a bunch of pots that come out of there. Maybe like half of the pots I put in came out that I was happy with, but those are probably the ones that I'm most kind of proud of. There are a few pictures that got really cool, like ash drips on them, that I was excited about. The grant I did, it's called the REAP grant, Research Experience Apprenticeship Program, I think. And I did it with Don Williams, who's the ceramics professor here at UNH. And the premise was, well, to take it back, so the people who started the ceramics program here, they're called Mary and Edwin Shire. There's a couple, and they were potters in the 20s and 30s, like the Great Depression. And they came here and started the clay program. Like these kick wheels are from, I think, from their time, which is pretty wild. And they were digging their own clay from near the football field. Like I found this old book in the library that said the Shires dug their clay from here. So it kind of gave me the idea that you could use local clay to make pots, because we're on the seacoast and there's a lot of marine clay. And so I thought, oh, it'd be really cool if I dug my own clay and made pots out of it. And that also sounds quite sciencey, because there's all this experimentation and you don't really know what you're going to get. And I would know if I had succeeded because I would have like fired things or if I'd failed. So it was a cool, like, it seemed very researchy. So then I saw the REAP grant, and I thought I could apply for that. So I worked on an application with Dawn and wrote up a big application, and it got passed. And then I spent the summer, I spent a lot of the summer looking for clay, because the whole thing was based off the premise that I would find some clay. And eventually I did find some in Durham Point, or on Durham Point, like an old house foundation that someone was, or a new house foundation that someone was digging. And I got to dig that up and process it. I found this cool video on YouTube, this BBC documentary from the 40s or 50s of this old village pottery in Japan, and they show how they made the clay. So I kind of like followed the steps there, because I was trying to do it legit without any electric tools or anything. And it worked out pretty well. I made a bunch of clay, and it had this really awesome reddy brown color. And yeah, and got super positive feedback from a lot of the professors here and students and whatnot. And I got to do this talk in the PCAC a while ago about my research. Yeah, it was awesome. It was a good time.